I don't call her mom. I never have. She told me when I was little that the word made her feel old, like someone with responsibilities she wasn't ready to have. So I grew up calling her Simone. Just Simone. Sometimes I'd slip up and call her mom, especially when I was younger and wanted comfort, but she'd always correct me with that forced smile and a laugh that wasn't really funny. Simone's fine, she'd say, brushing me off like I was someone else's kid, not hers. She had me when she was 19, young, wild, and in no way prepared. The story goes that she met my father, Derek, during a spring break trip. One whirlwind month later, she was pregnant, and by the time I was born, he was long gone. She never really talked about him, other than in passing, and when she did, it was always something bitter. He ran off the moment things got real, she'd sneer. Men like that don't stick around. But here's the thing, he didn't completely vanish. Derek moved back to his hometown, a few hours away, but he sent birthday cards and money every year like clockwork. He called when he could, and once, when I was 9, he even tried to come visit. Simone wouldn't let him in the house. I remember peeking through the curtain, watching as he stood outside in the rain, holding a gift bag with cartoon wrapping paper sticking out the top. She never gave it to me. I only found out years later when my aunt told me the truth. I don't know what hurt more, that he walked away so easily, or that Simone made sure I never got the chance to know him. But even back then, I could tell she wasn't just angry at him. She was angry at me. Like my existence was some constant reminder of a life she didn't want. And that anger seeped into everything. When I was 6, Simone met someone new. His name was Wyatt, and he was older, stable, calm in all the ways she wasn't. They got married within a year, and not long after, she had another daughter, Ellie. Suddenly, Simone morphed into a whole different person. She became that mom, the kind who packed organic lunches, joined the PDA, and documented Ellie's life like she was starring in a Pinterest board. For Ellie, there were ballet recitals, themed birthday parties, matching outfits with Simone in family photos. For me, leftovers. Shrugged off promises. A Christmas gift once bought at a gas station, still in its plastic bag. I tried not to let it crush me. I tried telling myself she was just busier now, or that I was older and didn't need the same kind of attention. But kids know. I knew. And every time she praised Ellie in public or gushed over her milestones while ignoring mine, it burrowed deeper inside me. I remember one time, I won a writing competition at school, first place statewide. I brought the certificate home, practically vibrating with pride. She looked up from her phone, skimmed it, and said, "That's nice. But Ellie just read her first full book without help today. Can you believe that?" I was 13. By the time I hit high school, I'd stopped trying to impress her. I poured myself into school, into friends, into anything that gave me a sense of worth she never did. I got a scholarship to college out of state, and the day I left, she barely looked up from the TV. No hug. No, "I'll miss you." Just a casual, "Text me when you get there, okay?" Like I was heading to the grocery store, not starting a new life. Wyatt cried when I left. I'll never forget that. College was a breath of fresh air. For the first time, I could breathe. I met people who saw me, really saw me, and not just as someone's mistake or shadow. I made friends who became family. And during my sophomore year, I met Caleb. Caleb was different. He didn't flinch at my walls. He didn't try to fix me or push me to talk. He just stayed. He was gentle with me in a way no one had ever been. We moved in together my senior year, and for the first time in my life, I felt wanted. Truly wanted. The kind of want that wraps around your ribs and stays even when you're at your lowest. Simone met him during a Thanksgiving visit. She was polite, fake smiling her way through dinner, but later that night, she cornered me in the kitchen. "He's too good-looking for you," she said flatly, pouring herself another glass of wine. "Don't get used to it." I froze. That wasn't just a jab. That was venom. I stared at her, waiting for her to say she was joking, that it was some twisted attempt at humor. But she just took a sip and wandered off like nothing had happened. It was that moment I understood something crucial. Simone wasn't just indifferent to me. She resented me. Maybe because I reminded her of the life she didn't want. Or maybe because despite everything, I still managed to build something good for myself. But from that night on, I stopped trying. I stopped hoping she'd ever become the mother I needed her to be. 2 years after graduation, Caleb and I got engaged. I didn't tell Simone right away. Part of me didn't want her involved at all. But word got out through Ellie, who had become one of the few ties I still had to that side of the family. Ellie was sweet, kind, nothing like Simone. I don't know how she turned out so different, but she always looked up to me, always wanted to spend time together when I came home for holidays. She was the only reason I didn't cut Simone off entirely. Simone wasn't happy about the engagement. She made that clear, said it was too soon, that Caleb and I should test the waters longer, even though we'd been together for 5 years. I let her talk, let it roll off me. But the final straw came when she said, "Don't rush into a wedding just because you're worried someone else will marry first." I stared at her. "What are you talking about?" She shrugged, casual. "Well, Ellie is older. Don't you think she should be the first to get married? Just seems more natural." I laughed, out loud, because it was absurd. Ellie had zero interest in marriage. She was traveling the world, taking odd jobs in Bali and backpacking through Europe. Marriage wasn't even on her radar. But for Simone, it wasn't about reality. It was about appearances, about control, about Ellie always coming first, even when she wasn't even trying to compete. That was the moment I decided Simone wasn't going to be a part of my wedding. I didn't invite her. I didn't tell her the date. I let her find out through the grapevine, and when she called me furious, screaming about betrayal, I calmly told her she was no longer part of my life, that she never truly had been. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. For months after the wedding, I heard nothing from Simone. Not a text, not a call, not even a passive-aggressive comment relayed through Ellie. And for the first time in my life, I felt peace. I filled our little home with quiet joy, sunflowers and mason jars, thrifted baby onesies tucked into drawers we hadn't used before. Caleb and I didn't plan to get pregnant so soon after the wedding, but when the test came back positive, we didn't feel fear. We felt whole. We told Ellie first. She was in Chile at the time, filming a documentary with a tiny crew and spotty Wi-Fi. She cried when we told her. Happy tears. She promised to fly home by the second trimester and demanded to be in the delivery room. Then we told Wyatt. He was gentle, warm, almost teary-eyed. He sent us a vintage bassinet he'd found in an antique store and wrote a long letter I read 3 times before placing it in the baby's keepsake box. I didn't tell Simone, but she found out anyway. It was a Wednesday morning when my phone buzzed with her name. I stared at it for a full minute, heart pounding. Against my better judgment, I answered. I heard your news, she said. No hello. Her voice was tight, clipped. Congratulations, I suppose. I didn't respond. There was a pause, then she added, Seems odd you didn't tell me yourself. I didn't think you'd care, I replied. She let out a short laugh. Oh, please. You really think I wouldn't be interested in my first grandchild? I bit my tongue. The word interested felt like the wrong currency coming from her. She wasn't interested in people, only in how they reflected back on her. Simone launched into some weird monologue about legacy, how she couldn't believe I of all people would be the first to have a child, how she thought Ellie would settle down first, how this was unexpected, how I must be rushing because I didn't want to be left behind. I'm 30, I said flatly. This isn't a race, Simone. But she kept going, her tone tightening with each sentence. You've always been impulsive. You're repeating my mistakes, can't you see that? Getting pregnant right after marriage? It's desperate. I snapped. The only mistake I'm not repeating is letting you into my child's life. The silence that followed was thunderous. She hung up. A week later, the packages started arriving. At first, I thought they were from Ellie, tiny gifts from her travels. But the return addresses were local. No sender name. Just an elegant, looping scrawl on the tags that said things like, for baby, or just a start. Inside were expensive baby clothes, delicate booties, a handcrafted mobile that must have cost a fortune. All high-end brands Simone never bought for me when I was a baby. All pristine. I returned every one. But it wasn't the packages that rattled me. It was the dinner invitation. Caleb's company had just launched a new design campaign, and to celebrate, one of his mentors threw a small formal dinner. Just 10 people. We were seated at a beautiful private room in a French restaurant downtown. Candles, creme brulee, linen napkins. For the first time since the pregnancy, I felt like myself again, not just a vessel. Then the door opened, and Simone walked in. She was wearing a silk burgundy gown and heels too high for a normal dinner. Her hair was pinned up with meticulous effort. The room went quiet for a second, the way it does when someone unexpected enters. Caleb's mentor rose with a smile and greeted her with a peck on the cheek. I blinked. My breath stalled. What the hell is she doing here? I whispered. Caleb looked just as confused. I have no idea. Simone glided over like we were old friends. Darling, she cooed, kissing the air near my cheek. Surprised to see me? Shock didn't even begin to cover it. As it turns out, Simone had met Caleb's mentor, Dean, months earlier at a charity auction through Wyatt's work. She had intentionally stayed in touch. When she heard about the event from someone at Dean's foundation, she asked if she could attend. I simply wanted to celebrate my daughter's growing family, she said, loud enough for the table to hear. We're rebuilding our bond, aren't we, sweetheart? It was a trap, a public ambush. I forced a smile so tight it hurt. Can we talk outside? She followed me into the hallway where I unleashed everything I'd held back. Why are you here? I demanded. You weren't invited. You don't even know Dean. She didn't miss a beat. I've been making connections, love. For your future. No, I said. For your ego. For appearances. To make people think we're close. You're using me. Her expression changed then, something dark and glimmering sliding into her eyes. It reflects poorly on me, she hissed. If my pregnant daughter is out there pretending her mother doesn't exist, what do you think people will say? I don't care what they say, I said. You don't get to bulldoze your way back in just because it's convenient. But Simone wasn't done. She leaned in, lowering her voice to a whisper. You're not as untouchable as you think. You forget I know things. Things Caleb doesn't. Want to test how well your little world holds up if I start talking? My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? But she just smiled and walked back inside. I stood there shaking, nausea creeping up into my throat. It wasn't just manipulation anymore. It was something else. Something deeper. That night, after the dinner, Caleb and I sat in silence on the couch, the glow of the kitchen light behind us. She said she knows things, I said quietly. Caleb looked at me, eyebrows knit. What kind of things? I don't know, I whispered. But I think she's going to do something. The weeks that followed were filled with a quiet dread. I couldn't shake the way Simone had whispered that threat into my ear, like a venomous promise cloaked in silk. I tried to brush it off, tried to convince myself she was bluffing, desperate for attention, clawing at whatever scraps of control she could find. But the anxiety lingered. Caleb could tell. He watched me closely as I sat through doctor's appointments, distracted and distant, as I folded baby clothes robotically, barely registering the soft fabric in my hands. I didn't want to tell him how deeply Simone had rattled me. I wanted this time to be about joy. I didn't want him to see the shadow of her hovering over everything I touched. But things didn't stay quiet for long. 2 weeks later, Simone called Caleb. Not me, Caleb. She left a voicemail, syrupy sweet on the surface, but laced with her signature undercurrent of manipulation. Hi, sweetheart, she cooed. I hope you're taking good care of my daughter. I know things haven't been perfect between us, but I think it's time we all sat down together. There's something important I need to share with both of you. You'll understand once we talk. Call me back, okay? When Caleb played it for me, my stomach dropped. I stared at my phone, debating whether to block her again or confront her directly. In the end, I didn't have to decide, because she showed up the next morning, at our front door, in full makeup, smiling like nothing had happened. Caleb was the one who answered. I heard his voice from the kitchen, stiff and confused. Simone? What are you doing here? I just wanted to drop something off. For the baby. She pushed past him like she owned the place. By the time I came out into the living room, she was already setting a box on our coffee table. It was wrapped in soft ivory paper, tied with a satin ribbon. She stood back and looked at me expectantly, as if I should gush with gratitude. I didn't say a word. I brought the photo album, she said, her tone light but layered. You know, from when you were a baby. I thought it might be nice for the nursery. My heart froze. Simone had never shown me baby pictures. Not once. When I was little, I used to sneak into her closet to find something, anything, that proved I had once been cherished. But all the albums were filled with Ellie. I used to think maybe the photos just didn't exist. Maybe she hadn't taken any. But now here she was, standing in my living room, holding them hostage. Caleb shot me a glance. I nodded slowly. Simone opened the box herself. Inside wasn't just a photo album. It was a pile of letters, journals, and strangest of all, a small, black notebook bound with a leather strap. She lifted it carefully and looked me dead in the eye. I think it's time you learned the truth about your father, she said softly. I blinked. Excuse me. Simone smiled like she'd been waiting years to say it. Derek wasn't who you think he was. Caleb looked between us, sensing the shift in energy. Is this really necessary right now? Simone ignored him. I didn't just push him away. He left because of what he did. He had problems. Dangerous ones. I kept them from you for your own protection. I stared at her. You've hated him my entire life. You called him a coward. I was protecting you, she repeated, and for the first time, I saw something not regret, but the strange glint of pride. Like she was pleased with her version of the past. I took the notebook and opened the first page. It wasn't Derek's handwriting, it was hers. Page after page of journal entries, written like letters to herself. But they weren't about Derek. They were about me. What I read made my skin go cold. I don't know how to look at her without seeing everything I gave up. Sometimes I wish she'd never been born. I see the way she looks at me, like she wants me to be someone I'm not. I can't be that for her. I don't want to. I closed the book slowly and looked at Simone. What is this? She shrugged. My truth. You always wanted to understand, didn't you? Caleb's jaw clenched. You wrote this down? About your daughter. I was young. It was therapy. She said it so casually, like she hadn't just dropped a grenade in our home. I stood up. My voice was shaking. You came here to warn me about Derek. And instead, you handed me proof that you've hated me since birth? Simone's mask slipped for just a second. You never made it easy to love you. There it was. Raw. Unfiltered. The truth I'd spent my entire life suspecting but never quite hearing out loud. Caleb stood and put himself between us. You need to leave. Now. Simone tilted her head, amused. I haven't even told you the rest. There is no rest, I snapped. You've done enough damage for one lifetime. But before she could respond, the door opened behind her. Ellie. She stood frozen, backpack slung over one shoulder, having heard the last few seconds of the conversation. Her face was pale. I was coming to surprise you, she said softly, looking at me. Then she turned to Simone. What the hell is wrong with you? Simone's eyes darted from her to me and back again. Ellie, don't. No, Ellie said, her voice sharp. You need to stop. You need to go. Right now. Simone's jaw twitched, but she didn't argue. She took one last look at the room, like she was trying to memorize the way she'd made us feel, and walked out without another word. When the door clicked shut, Ellie turned to me, eyes wide. What the hell did she give you? I handed her the notebook. She didn't make it past the second page before tears filled her eyes. The days after Simone's visit were coated in silence, like grief had pressed itself into every surface of our home. I couldn't bring myself to look at the notebook again. It sat on the dining table, untouched, like a bomb that hadn't gone off yet. Ellie stayed with us for 3 days. She tried to act normal, but I could see the way her eyes kept flicking toward that leather cover like she was trying to make sense of the version of our mother it had revealed. On the second night, she and I sat on the balcony under a fading sunset, the city buzzing quietly below. She was curled into the chair, knees pulled to her chest, wearing one of Caleb's hoodies. She looked smaller than I remembered, like the truth had shrunk her somehow. I used to think you were exaggerating, she said softly. When we were growing up. About how she treated you. I didn't respond. I didn't see it. Or maybe I didn't want to. She was different with me. She chose to be different with you, I said. That's the part that always hurt the most. Ellie nodded, her face tight with guilt. I should have said something. I should have done something. But I was the favorite, and I didn't want to lose that. I looked at her. It's not your fault. She shook her head. It doesn't matter. I still saw it. That was the thing about Ellie. She wasn't like Simone. She didn't deflect or deny. She sat with hard truths, even when they cut her open. The morning after she left, I got an email from an unfamiliar address. No subject line. No greeting. Just one line. If you want to know who your mother really is, you should ask her about Logan Barrett. I stared at the name for a long time. Logan Barrett. It meant nothing to me. I didn't reply. Instead, I texted Wyatt. He responded almost instantly, come over. Alone. When I arrived, he was already waiting at the door, keys in hand. He hadn't aged much, but his face looked drawn, like sleep had been optional for a while now. We sat on the back porch, the autumn air crisp around us. He poured us both coffee, then pulled a file folder from under the table. I knew this day would come, he said. My stomach flipped. You know who Logan Barrett is? Wyatt nodded, slowly. Yeah, and you're not going to like it. He handed me the folder. Inside were printed emails. Some from lawyers, others from what looked like a social worker. I skimmed through the first page and saw Simone's name. My name. And then, circled in red ink, Logan Barrett, legal guardian petition. What is this? I whispered. Wyatt took a breath. Simone tried to give you up. When you were 5. My mouth went dry. What? She filed a petition to relinquish her parental rights. She said she couldn't handle raising you anymore. Said you were too difficult, too much like your father. She told the court she wanted you placed with distant family. Logan Barrett was your dad's cousin. I stared at the papers, willing the words to rearrange themselves into something less impossible. She tried to get rid of me. Wyatt nodded grimly. But your dad fought it. He wasn't in the picture much, but when he found out, he lost it. Hired an attorney. That's when Simone backed down. She didn't want to deal with a court battle. Said it was all a mistake. Said she was just overwhelmed. My head spun. Why didn't anyone tell me? I wanted to, Wyatt said. But Simone made me promise not to. She said if I ever told you, she'd cut me off from Ellie. And I couldn't risk losing her. I looked up at him, tears blurring the world. She's been lying to me my whole life. She's been lying to everyone, he said gently. But especially you. I drove home in a daze. Caleb opened the door before I even knocked. One look at my face, and he knew something was wrong. I didn't say anything, just handed him the file and collapsed onto the couch. He sat beside me, reading every page. His face grew tighter with each one. When he finally finished, he whispered, "She tried to erase you." I nodded, and then something in me snapped. I had spent so much of my life trying to understand Simone, trying to forgive her, explain her cruelty, patch over her rejection with logic. But there was no logic here, no forgiveness. She had tried to abandon me, and then spent the rest of my life punishing me for staying. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my father. He answered on the second ring. "Hey," he said, voice low and cautious. "It's been a while." "I found out what she did," I said. "About Logan. About the petition." There was a long pause. "I was hoping you never would," he murmured. "But I guess it was only a matter of time." "Why didn't you tell me?" "I wanted to. So many times. But you were just a kid. And later, I figured, what good would it do to dig it all back up? I thought maybe it was better if you never knew." "It wasn't," I said. "I deserved the truth." "You're right," he said. "I'm sorry." I closed my eyes. "Why did you let her keep me?" "Because the court said she was your mother. And back then, that was enough." There was another pause. "But if I'd known what she'd become, I would have fought harder." I believed him. For the first time, I believed him. And I knew what I had to do. Simone had spent years constructing this version of herself. The doting mother, the misunderstood woman, the victim. But she wasn't any of those things. She was a liar, a manipulator. And I wasn't going to let her pretend anymore. She had tried to erase me. Now, I was going to erase her. I spent 2 days collecting myself, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I needed to be calm, composed, and absolutely unshakable for what I was about to do. Simone had destroyed so much of my life from the shadows. Whispered manipulations, slow-drip toxicity, carefully placed lies. She didn't scream or rage or throw things. No, her weapon was the scalpel, not the hammer. Precise, quiet, deadly. But I had a plan. It started with a baby shower. Ellie had offered to host 1 month ago, and we'd finally settled on a date. Nothing over the top, just a warm gathering of close friends and chosen family. At first, I wasn't going to invite Simone. But then I realized something. If I didn't invite her, she'd find a way to show up anyway. She always did. Better to control the setting. Better to hold the match in my own hand. Ellie was in on it. So were Wyatt and Caleb. Even my dad agreed to be there. Not just as support, but as a witness. The goal wasn't revenge. It wasn't about theatrics. It was about finally showing everyone who Simone really was. The shower was held at Ellie's apartment. A sprawling, bohemian loft she'd inherited from a client in her documentary work. Sunlight poured through arched windows. Plants lined the shelves. There were handmade name tags and cinnamon sugar pastries and little mason jars filled with lavender honey as party favors. Simone arrived late, of course. She swept in like a movie star. Oversized sunglasses, designer scarf, and the smug confidence of someone who believed the day revolved around her. She greeted a few people with cheek kisses and dramatically clutched her chest when she saw me. "My sweet girl," she said. Radiant, even now. I didn't respond. Just gestured toward the food table and moved away. Everything went smoothly for a while. Small talk. Polaroids. Games. I let myself relax into the joy of it all, for just a moment. Until the knock on the door came. I watched Simone freeze mid-sentence, her face going pale. Her gaze shot to the door like a reflex. Ellie opened it, and in walked someone none of us had seen in nearly a decade. Logan Barrett. He was older now, salt at his temples and deep lines across his brow. But I recognized him from a single photo my father had once shown me. The resemblance to Derek was impossible to miss. Simone stumbled back half a step. "Logan," she breathed, voice shaking. "I got your message," he said coolly. She blinked, confused. "What message?" He turned to me. "You reached out, didn't you?" I nodded. Simone's eyes snapped to me. "You invited him?" "Of course I did," I said calmly. "You said we should talk about the past. I thought we'd do it together." The room went quiet. Logan stepped forward, looking around at the guests. "I don't want to take up much time, but since we're all here to celebrate new life and new beginnings, I figured I'd share something that's been kept secret for far too long." Simone's hands trembled. "You see," he continued, 25 years ago, Simone contacted me about taking in her daughter. She said she didn't want her anymore. Said she was too hard to raise. That she reminded her of everything she regretted." There was a murmur around the room. Simone's face flushed a deep crimson. "She said she wanted to start fresh," Logan added. "And she asked me to legally adopt her child so she could pretend it had never happened." "She's lying." Simone snapped suddenly. "He's lying. He's always hated me." Logan remained calm. "I have the emails. The court documents. The signed petition. I've kept them for 20 years. Just in case. I was young." Simone shouted, her voice cracking. "I didn't mean it. I was overwhelmed. No," I cut in, voice firm. "You meant it. You've always meant it. And the only reason you're panicking now is because someone finally pulled back the curtain." I stepped toward her, heart pounding but steady. "You tried to erase me. Then you punished me for surviving it. You called it overwhelm. I call it abandonment. And today, I'm done pretending." Simone looked around at the room, but there was no sympathy in the eyes staring back. Just horror, disbelief, quiet judgment. Even the people who once excused her quirks were seeing her clearly now. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Caleb crossed the room and stood beside me. Ellie did too. Then Wyatt. "I want you to leave," I said. Simone hesitated. But then, slowly, she turned and walked toward the door. No longer the woman who entered like a queen. Just a stranger slinking away under the weight of her own shame. When the door clicked shut, the silence broke. People started to murmur again, move around, breathe. Logan looked at me. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, I think I finally am." He smiled, warm and sad. "You deserve better. I'm sorry I couldn't give it to you then." "You just did," I said. "You gave me the truth." He reached into his pocket and handed me an envelope. Inside was a single photo, me, age 5, sitting on a swing set in a park I didn't remember. Standing behind me, hands gently on the chains, was Logan. It must have been the one visit I never knew happened. The day before Simone changed her mind. "She let me take you for one day," he said. And I never forgot it. I held the photo like it was sacred. I'd never seen myself looked at that way before. The air felt different after that day, lighter, quieter. Like the moment Simone stepped out of Ellie's apartment. She took with her the storm that had clouded every major chapter of my life. The baby shower had turned into something else entirely. What began as a simple celebration ended in emotional reckoning, truth-telling, and the unraveling of decades' worth of deception. I didn't plan it that way, but I don't think I could have planned it better. Simone didn't reach out after that. Not once. I half expected the flurry of guilt texts or long-winded voicemails, spinning her own version of events. But there was nothing. No attempts to apologize. No angry defenses. Just silence. For a while, I wondered if that silence meant something had finally broken inside her, too. Or maybe, for the first time in her life, she realized there was no one left to manipulate. Every mask she'd ever worn had cracked, one by one, until the only thing left was the woman she truly was, and nobody wanted to stand near the wreckage anymore. A week after the shower, Caleb and I started putting the nursery together. It wasn't just a room, it was a sanctuary. A promise. Every book on the shelf, every onesie folded with care, every soft star hung from the ceiling was a quiet vow to never repeat what had been done to me. I wouldn't parent from bitterness or regret. I wouldn't view my child as a burden or a mirror of mistakes. They would grow up knowing love, not earning it. Knowing safety, not begging for it. Ellie came over constantly, painting tiny forest animals on the walls with her artist's precision. Wyatt helped build the crib. My dad drove in every weekend, installing baby-proofing like it was a full-time job. The absence of Simone was not a hole. It was a gift. The space she left behind was filled by people who showed up, not out of guilt or obligation, but out of choice, out of love. And then, one warm, rainy afternoon in April, my daughter was born. We named her Rowan. She came into the world with a powerful, determined cry, and eyes that locked onto mine as if we'd been waiting lifetimes to find each other again. Caleb wept openly, holding us both like he never wanted to let go. I'd never felt anything like it, not even close. It was a love so vast and clean and unburdened, it took my breath away. In the hospital, while Rowan slept on my chest, I thought of Simone. And for the first time, I didn't feel rage or grief. I felt nothing. No longing. No ache. Just the quiet understanding that her chapter in my story was finally and permanently closed. 2 months after Rowan was born, Wyatt called me. "She's gone," he said simply. I blinked. Gone where? She packed up and left town. I found a note on the kitchen counter. No forwarding address. No explanation. She left her ring, her phone, everything. My first instinct was to ask why, but then I realized I didn't care. "She'll surface somewhere," I said. "She always does." "Not this time," Wyatt murmured. I think she finally understood. That she burned every bridge she ever built. I didn't go looking for her. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need closure. Because what she'd given me, unintentionally, was far more powerful than forgiveness. She gave me proof of the kind of mother I never wanted to be. And in her absence, I was able to become the mother I chose to be. The kind of mother who reads every bedtime story. Who never lets birthdays pass without magic. Who doesn't measure love in conditions or checkboxes. Rowan would never wonder if she was wanted. She would never hear her name in a curse or feel like a placeholder in someone else's life. Years from now, when she's old enough to ask, I'll tell her the truth. Not the ugly details, not the venom, but the truth that matters. That family isn't always who you're born to. Sometimes it's who stands by you, paints your nursery, builds your crib, flies across the world just to hold your hand. That love, real love, isn't loud or performative. It's quiet, steady, and most of all, it stays.